Hello and welcome to Asia News Today, our daily, weekday anyway, whip around the area, mostly concentrating on Southeast Asia and Northern Asia. Now, because it's YouTube, it'd be great if you could click that like button and also subscribe to the channel, and you can organise to get alerts if you want. Let's get started. A mentally disabled man is now awaiting execution in Singapore after Singapore's highest court rejected a final appeal by a man sentenced to death for drug trafficking. There's been a concerted campaign over the man's situation, his lawyers claiming that the trial violated international laws as the man has intellectual disabilities. Yesterday's ruling ends all legal avenues to prevent his execution, and supporters say he could be hanged within days at the notorious Changi jail. The case has drawn international attention, with the UN, Malaysia's PM and even British billionaire Richard Branson getting involved and putting the city-state's zero-tolerance drug laws and capital punishment back under scrutiny. The 34-year-old Malaysian citizen was arrested back in 2009 for bringing 43 grams of heroin into Singapore. He was convicted and sentenced to death a year later, the mandatory sentence under Singapore's draconian criminal code for drug offences. Yesterday, the convicted man's lawyer said the Court of Appeal has just dismissed the application and considered the appeal an abuse of process and that international law does not apply. Nagaenthran, who is mentally disabled, is due to be hanged possibly in the next few days. In his ruling, the Singaporean Chief Justice said there was no admissible evidence showing any decline in the appellant's mental condition after the commission of the offence. They said the case mounted by the appellant's counsel was baseless and without merit, both as a matter of fact and of law. Anti-death penalty group Reprieve said the convicted man is now facing imminent execution unless he's pardoned by Singapore's president. North Korea's much publicised long-range missile launch last week may have been just a modified version of a missile type they'd tested 5 years ago, not the newly developed type of intercontinental ballistic missile that Pyongyang claims they successfully fired. South Korean intelligence claims that North Korea's claim was false, that it was actually a Hwasong-15 and not the newer, longer-range Hwasong-17. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff confirmed last week's launch, saying that the missile flew 1,080 kilometres at an altitude of 6,200 kilometres. But regardless of whether that missile was the old or new type, South Korean and Japanese military analysis confirms the trajectory shows a considerable improvement in technology, and the range and scale of the ICBM could potentially reach New York or Washington. North Korea's state television widely reported the launch through a 12-minute, highly theatrical video claiming the new missile would mark the end to a self-imposed moratorium on testing long-range missiles since 2017 and make the whole world clearly aware of the power of our strategic armed forces once again. Enjoy the film. South Korea's latest daily COVID infections rose to over 424,000 this morning amid concerns over a continuing rise in seriously ill patients and deaths over the fast spread of the new highly transmissible Omicron variant. The current caseload in South Korea is 12,774,956 people. The highest number of daily infections hit a peak back on March the 17th with over 621,000 people. The country added 432 new COVID-related deaths today, the second largest daily figure, but the fatality rate is still relatively low at 0.12%. But there are still 1,301 people in critical care, including artificial respiration at this time. That number's been staying over 1,000 for the month of March. The even more transmissible BA.2, also called the stealth Omicron variant, has become the dominant strain in South Korea and continues to spread fast.
Join the conversation and have your voice heard. Discuss the issues, share information, and get information. Thaiger Talk is where you keep in touch with everything Thailand. go to thetiger.com/talk.
The US is proposing forging a crucial semiconductor industry alliance between the US, Taiwan, South Korea and Japan. The move is to prevent China from gaining further dominance over the strategic semiconductor sector. But South Korea isn't fully on board at this time with the current idea proposed by the US. According to Business Korea, cooperation with the US is the top priority, and yet the biggest market, China, is also of paramount importance. According to the article, the South Korean government is reluctant to jeopardize the operations of South Korean chip makers like Samsung, who retain a core manufacturing infrastructure in China, with an estimated 40% of all their flash memory and semiconductors still coming out of China. Meanwhile, China is waging economic warfare as they try and acquire Taiwan's semiconductor industries, home to the world leaders in the semiconductor industry. The Taiwanese government is accusing China of waging economic warfare against Taiwan's tech sector by stealing technology and poaching skilled engineers, according to the report. Well, here's a manufacturing switcheroo. Vietnam's automaker Vinfast announced yesterday that it signed a preliminary deal to invest an initial US $2 billion to build a factory in North Carolina to manufacture electric buses, SUVs and batteries for EVs. That's electric vehicles. Part of the conglomerate Vingroup, it says it plans a total investment of US $4 billion in its first US factory complex. Construction will begin this year as soon as the company gets necessary permits and expected to be finished by July 2024. The plant's initial capacity will be 150,000 units per year. The Vingroup Vice Chair and Vinfast Global CEO said yesterday, with a manufacturing facility right in the US, Vinfast can stabilise prices and shorten product delivery time, making our EVs even more accessible to customers. Vinfast is taking orders globally for 2 electric SUVs with a goal to begin delivering them at the end of this year. China is warning the Philippines against interfering with its Coast Guard patrols at what the Philippines call the Patanag Shoal, saying the shoal and its waters are part of Chinese territory. The Philippines Coast Guard reported last week, as we did here on Asia News Today, that a Chinese Coast Guard vessel came dangerously close to one of its patrol ships near the shoal in what the Philippines call close distance manoeuvring. That incident happened back on March the 2nd. Using the Chinese name for the shoal, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson told reporters in Beijing that it was China's inherent territory. The shoal is about 200 kilometres west of Philippines and about 300 kilometres away from the capital Manila, a lot closer to the Philippines than it is to China. But the Chinese spokesperson claimed, "We hope that the Philippine ships will earnestly abide by China's domestic law and international law and avoid interfering with the patrol and law enforcement of the China Coast Guard in the above-mentioned water." The Philippines government is rejecting any claims of China over what it claims as its territorial waters in the South China Sea. Well, that's all the main stories from around Asia over the past 24 hours. We do this 5 days a week, and because it's YouTube, it'd be great if you could subscribe to the channel and maybe even click that like button. But from all of us here at The Thaiger, and by the way, you can go to thetiger.com to check all the latest news. Thank you for watching. We'll have another Asia News Today tomorrow.